Alarm klaxons shattered the methodical calm of monitoring station Epsilon 9. Senior sensor operator Krulvex's 4 eyes widened simultaneously, their membranous lids retracting in shock as the holographic display rendered information that couldn't possibly be correct. "Report, operator," Station Commander Zorix demanded, his voice cutting through the cacophony of alert signals and panicked chatter. "Unknown vessel detected in Sector 87 Ta, Commander. It's absorbing our scanning beams rather than reflecting them." Krulvex's voice trembled as his slender fingers manipulated the console. "The energy signatures are like nothing in our database." Commander Zorix moved closer, his exoskeletal frame clicking against the polished floor. The display showed a vessel of modest size but unusual configuration. Its hull appeared to shimmer slightly as the Zexarian scanning beams made contact. "Magnify and analyze," Zorix ordered, his respiratory sacs inflating with tension. The image expanded, revealing more details. The ship's designation appeared in unfamiliar characters. UESTHUNDRCH. "Commander, the vessel's hull composition appears to be actively adapting to our scanner frequencies. Each successive scan is less effective than the previous one." The junior analyst's voice rose an octave. "It's learning from us." Zorix's communications appendage reached for the emergency broadcast control. "This is Station Commander Zorix initiating Threat Protocol Omega. All military vessels within range of Sector 87 Ta are to converge immediately. I am declaring a Class 1 alert across all 7 worlds of the Confederacy." As panic spread throughout the Zexarian monitoring station, the source of their terror drifted peacefully through space, unaware of the chaos it was causing. Captain Alina Reyes of the UES Thunderchild sipped her coffee, grimacing slightly at the bitter taste. 6 months into their deep space exploratory mission, even the best ship's synthesizer couldn't make a decent cup. "Status report, Lieutenant Parker," she asked, swiveling her command chair toward the navigation console. Lieutenant Parker nodded without looking up from his displays. "All systems nominal, Captain. We're maintaining course through this sector. Interesting stellar phenomena approximately 6 light hours from our position. Some unusual radiation patterns worth investigating. Noted. Let's adjust course slightly to take a closer look." Captain Rice set down her mug and straightened her uniform jacket. "Dr. Takahashi might get some interesting readings for his radiation studies." Communications Officer Rivera frowned at her console. "Captain, I'm detecting some unusual signal patterns from the direction of that planetoid cluster. Not typical background noise." Alina considered this for a moment. "Natural phenomenon or artificial?" "Difficult to determine, Captain. The patterns have some regularity, but there's significant interference in this region." Rivera adjusted her settings. "Could be magnetically charged dust reflecting communication signals from somewhere else. Keep monitoring, but don't waste too much time on it. Probably just deep space interference." Alina made a note on her datapad. "Chief Engineer Tanaka, let's power up the magnetic shields to better study that stellar phenomenon Lieutenant Parker mentioned. No sense in exposing the hull to unnecessary radiation." In the engineering section, Chief Engineer Hiroshi Tanaka acknowledged the order and initiated the sequence. "Powering magnetic shields to 60%, Captain. That should be sufficient for the radiation levels we're detecting." The Thunderchild's external emitters hummed to life, creating an invisible protective field around the vessel. The energy surge was modest by human standards, a routine precaution for a ship designed to study potentially hazardous cosmic events. On monitoring station Epsilon 9, chaos erupted. "Commander, energy surge from the unknown vessel." Krulvex's voice cracked with panic. "Their weapon systems are activating." The holographic display showed the Thunderchild surrounded by a rapidly expanding energy field that the Zexarian sensors interpreted as a weapons system of unprecedented magnitude. Commander Zorix's exoskeleton paled to an ashen gray. "By the 7 moons, what are we facing?" The senior tactical analyst's appendages trembled as she reported. The energy output suggests offensive capabilities beyond anything in our records, Commander. If that's a weapons system, it could potentially neutralize an entire battle group. Or worse, added the xenobiological specialist, it could be preparing to release some form of energy-based pathogen. The field characteristics share similarities with our theoretical models for energy matter conversion. Commander Zorix activated the highest priority communication channel to Zexarian High Command. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. We have detected what appears to be an advanced warship of unknown origin. Request immediate deployment of the defense fleet and activation of planetary shields across all 7 worlds. The entity designates itself as Thunderchild and appears to be human in origin. As the warning spread across the Zexarian Confederacy, the Thunderchild continued its peaceful journey, its crew blissfully unaware that they had just been classified as the most dangerous threat in recorded Zexarian history. Captain Alina Reyes stood at the viewport, watching as 3 vessels approached the Thunderchild in a tight delta formation. Their design was unlike anything in Earth's databases, iridescent hulls that seemed to shimmer between states of matter, with propulsion systems that left no visible exhaust trail. Tactical assessment, Lieutenant Chen, she asked, maintaining her calm demeanor despite the rapid acceleration of the approaching ships. Lieutenant Wei Chen studied his displays intently. Definitely military formation, Captain. They're maintaining synchronized movement patterns that suggest highly coordinated operations. Energy readings indicate powered weapon systems, though of unfamiliar design. First contact protocols, people, Captain Rice announced, her voice steady, but tinged with excitement. Let's make history, not war. Communications, prepare standard greeting packages across all frequencies. Lieutenant Commander Jackson, prepare Shuttle 1 with the first contact package. The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, though tension hung in the air. Humanity had encountered 5 alien species in its expansion into the stars, all peaceful or at least non-hostile. But this was different. These ships were clearly warships, and their approach vector left little doubt about their intentions. Lieutenant Commander Michael Jackson headed to the shuttle bay, gathering the carefully prepared first contact materials. Mathematical sequences representing universal constants, simple pictographic representations of humans in non-threatening poses, and small containers of inert materials from Earth, samples of water, stone, and processed metals that represented human technology without providing any military advantage. Communications ready, Captain, reported Officer Rivera. Broadcasting mathematical sequences on all frequencies, prime numbers, the value of pi, and a hydrogen atom structure. Aboard the Zexarian command vessel Inevitable Justice, Battlemaster Thrix studied the incoming transmissions with mounting horror. The arrogance, he hissed, his dorsal spines flaring in agitation. They send us countdown sequences disguised as mathematical constants. Each transmission ends with the structure of a hydrogen fusion reaction. They're threatening us with fusion weapons. His second-in-command, Sub-Commander Vril, manipulated the sensor controls with trembling appendages. Battlemaster, they're deploying a smaller craft. Its energy signature is minimal, but our predictive systems indicate it could be a delivery system for targeted weaponry. The tactical display showed the small shuttle emerging from the Thunderchild, its trajectory placing it on an intercept course with the Zexarian formation. The humans mock us with these transparent deceptions, Frick snarled, his exoskeleton flushing dark purple with rage. They send this primitive craft while their main vessel prepares more sophisticated attacks. A junior officer monitoring communication channels interjected hesitantly. Battlemaster, the small craft is broadcasting simple pictographic images, bipedal forms with upper limbs extended. Attack postures, Fricks declared. They show us how they will dominate us. Tactical officer, analyze their main vessel for vulnerabilities. The tactical officer worked frantically, correlating sensor data with theoretical models. Battlemaster, I've identified what appears to be their primary communications array. It's less shielded than other systems. Fricks contemplated the display momentarily before making his decision. Target their communications, a precision strike to demonstrate our capabilities without provoking their main weapon systems. Perhaps they will reconsider their aggression. Firing solutions prepared. Battlemaster. Execute. On the bridge of the Thunderchild, River's console suddenly erupted with warning indicators. Captain, they're targeting us. Energy weapons charging. Before Captain Reyes could respond, the ship shuddered violently as a beam of coherent energy struck its port side. Damage report. She called out as emergency systems activated throughout the bridge. Direct hit to our primary communications array, Chen reported, his voice tight with controlled panic. 70% functionality lost. Secondary systems intact but degrading. The view screen showed a spectacular explosion where the communications array had been struck, debris spinning away from the Thunderchild's hull. Recall the shuttle immediately, Captain Reyes ordered. Defensive posture only. I want minimal countermeasures. No offensive actions without my direct order. Lieutenant Chen looked up from his console, his face pale. Captain, that wasn't a random strike. They hit our primary communications array with surgical precision. These aren't random hostiles. They knew exactly where to hit us. In the shuttle bay, Lieutenant Commander Jackson received the recall order and quickly brought the shuttle back aboard. The first contact materials never delivered. Options, people, Captain Rice demanded, surveying her bridge crew. We're being surrounded, Captain, Chen reported. 5 more vessels have appeared on long-range sensors, all converging on our position. Captain Rice took a deep breath. First contact scenarios were always unpredictable, but this one was rapidly becoming her worst nightmare. Initiate evasive pattern Delta 6, she ordered. I want enough distance to assess the situation without appearing to flee. And someone get me a communications channel to these people. Any channel, any frequency. There has to be a way to talk our way out of this. As the Thunderchild executed a series of precise evasive maneuvers that seemed to defy the laws of physics as the Zexarians understood them, Battlemaster Thrix watched with growing dread. By the eternal void, he whispered, what have we provoked? Throughout the 7 worlds of the Zexarian Confederacy, citizens gathered around public viewing screens, private holodisplays, and communal projection centers. The images playing across every screen showed the same terrifying spectacle, the human vessel Thunderchild executing maneuvers that defied Zexarian understanding of propulsion physics. This is not simulated footage, announced the solemn news presenter, her voice flanked by emotion markers indicating extreme caution and controlled fear. The Security Council has authorized this release to prepare citizens for potential evacuation protocols. On Zexar Prime, the capital world, military analyst Vex Moria addressed the hastily assembled high command with uncharacteristic emotional inflection in her presentation. The human vessel demonstrates capabilities that suggest technological advancement beyond our theoretical models, she stated, her appendages trembling slightly as she manipulated the display controls. Observe its evasive pattern. The holographic representation showed the Thunderchild pivoting impossibly on its axis, thrusters firing in synchronized sequences that allowed it to maintain position while changing orientation faster than Zexarian tracking systems could follow. Our pursuit vessels are unable to establish weapons lock for more than 2.7 seconds before the human ship executes another unpredictable vector change, Vex Moria continued. Additionally, and perhaps more concerning, is this footage captured approximately 22 minutes after our initial defensive strike. The display shifted to show the damaged section of the Thunderchild's hull. Tiny points of light moved across the damaged area, maintenance drones deploying temporary patches and rerouting exposed systems. The human vessel repairs itself, Vex Moria concluded, her voice dropping to a near whisper. It needs no supply lines, can outmaneuver our fastest interceptors, and possesses energy shielding that adapts to our scanning frequencies. We must consider the possibility that we are facing a technology so advanced that our current strategic models are insufficient. Inside the cramped engineering bay of the Thunderchild, Chief Engineer Hiroshi Tanaka wiped sweat from his brow as he manually rerouted power conduits. Around him, his team worked frantically amidst the hissing of emergency coolant systems and the acrid smell of overheated circuitry. "Bypass the tertiary communication node," he ordered, his voice hoarse from shouting over the din of emergency systems. "We need to get at least basic signaling capacity back online." Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez ducked under a hanging cable. "Chief, the primary EPS conduit is reaching critical temperature. If we don't reduce power flow in the next 3 minutes, we'll lose the entire grid." Tanaka nodded grimly. "Redirect power through the backup mining sequencers. They're designed for high-energy bursts during asteroid-cutting operations." "But sir, those systems were never meant to handle continuous power flow. They cooled." "I know the specs, Lieutenant," Tanaka interrupted, his hands never stopping their work. "I designed those sequencers myself. They'll hold for at least 6 hours before degrading, and by then, we'll either have a proper repair solution or be dead." Across the room, Ensign Prakash called out, "External repair drones are operational, Chief. Deploying temporary hull patches now." "Good," Tanaka replied. "Keep them moving constantly. Those alien ships are still taking potshots at anything that stays still for too long." The engineering team had never trained for this specific scenario, that damaged vessel surrounded by hostile alien forces with no communication with Earth Command. But they adapted with the creativity and determination that characterized human engineering philosophy. They recycled damaged components, repurposed systems designed for mining operations, and manually rerouted power through backup systems never designed for combat operations. When the ship's lights flickered briefly during a particularly creative power rerouting operation, Tanaka barely noticed. It was simply another problem to solve. On the bridge of the inevitable justice, the Zexarian flagship, Battle Master Thrix watched with growing unease as the human vessel's external lights dimmed momentarily, then returned with a different configuration. "It's changing," he murmured, more to himself than to his officers, "adapting its form to better counter our attacks." His tactical officer's voice quavered slightly as he reported, "Battlemaster, our analysis suggests the human vessel is entering some form of enhanced combat configuration. Energy signatures are shifting in patterns consistent with weapon charging sequences, but unlike any we have encountered." In reality, the Thunderchild was simply operating on emergency power as Tanaka's team rerouted critical systems, but to the Zexarians, whose technology developed along fundamentally different principles, it appeared as though the human ship was metamorphosing into something even more dangerous. When the small repair drones emerged from their housing bays, Zexarian sensors classified them as micro-weapon platforms. Their erratic movement patterns, designed to make them difficult targets for debris in asteroid fields, registered as advanced evasive capabilities that Zexarian targeting systems struggle to track. Sub-Commander Vril approached Thrix with a data tablet. "The High Command has authorized deployment of the 3rd Battle Group. 73 vessels will converge on this position within the next 6 hours." Thrix stared at the human ship on his display, its alien contours now seeming ominous in ways he couldn't fully articulate. 73 of our most powerful vessels," he repeated quietly, "against one human ship. Is it not reassuring, Battlemaster?" Vril asked, confusion evident in his tone. "What troubles me, Sub-Commander," Thrix replied, his gaze never leaving the display, "is that I'm not entirely convinced it will be enough." Admiral Krathor stood before the massive tactical display dominating the Zexarian Central Command Chamber. His aged exoskeleton, bearing the ceremonial scars of 17 major conflicts, seemed particularly heavy today as he watched the positions of 73 battlecruisers converge on a single point in space. "Status report," he commanded, his voice carrying the harmonic undertones that denoted his supreme rank. The human vessel maintains its position at the coordinates designated Alpha Strike. Admiral, responded his tactical coordinator. All battle groups report ready status. Temporal synchronization complete. We can commence the unified assault on your command. Admiral Craftfor studied the display, his compound eyes narrowing. The human ship, this Thunderchild, remained stationary despite being surrounded by the most formidable assembly of Zexarian military might in 3 generations. Why does it allow us to surround it? He whispered to his strategic advisor, an aging academic whose theoretical models had guided Zexarian military doctrine for decades. The advisor's respiratory sacs inflated nervously. There are 3 possibilities, Admiral. First, their sensor capabilities may be inferior to ours, and they are unaware of our full deployment. Second, they may be experiencing critical system failures from our initial engagement and are unable to maneuver. Third, yes, Craftfor prompted when the advisor hesitated. Third, they are fully aware of our forces and are simply unafraid. A heavy silence fell across the command center as the implications of this third possibility sank in. Your recommendation, Craftfor finally asked. A simultaneous attack from all vessels, maximum dispersal pattern, alternating frequencies on all weapon systems to prevent their adaptive shielding from compensating. Admiral Craftfor gave the order, his voice betraying none of the dread building within his thoracic cavity. On the bridge of the Thunderchild, Captain Rice studied the tactical display with growing concern. Over the past 4 hours, they had watched as alien vessel after alien vessel arrived, taking positions in a spherical formation around her ship. Tactical assessment, Lieutenant Chen, she requested, her voice calm despite the circumstances. We're surrounded, Captain. I count 73 vessels, all with energy signatures suggesting armed weapon systems. They've positioned themselves to ensure overlapping fields of fire. There's no direction we could move without encountering at least 15 weapons locks. Dr. Sarah Mbeki, the ship's xenoanthropologist, had been invited to the bridge to offer her insights. She studied the communications data they had managed to intercept despite their damaged systems. Captain, their language patterns suggest they're terrified of us. Of this ship specifically, she reported. The frequency of certain harmonic clusters in their transmissions correlates with extreme emotional states in other non-humanoid species I studied. Captain Rice frowned. Terrified. We've made no aggressive moves. We attempted peaceful communication before they attacked our comm array. That's just it, Mbeki explained. I think they misinterpreted our standard greeting package. The mathematical sequences we sent, they may have cultural meanings we're unaware of. And our hull design. She gestured toward a schematic of the Thunderchild. The radiation dampening properties that make us nearly invisible to Earth's corporate pirates. To them, it might appear as though we're absorbing their scanning beams intentionally, an act of aggression or demonstration of technological superiority. Chief Tactical Officer Chen's console began flashing urgent warnings. Captain, energy spikes across all surrounding vessels. They're preparing to fire, multiple targeting locks established. Options, Lieutenant, Rice demanded. Limited, Captain. We could try to punch through at a single point in their formation, but with our current damage status, I estimate less than 30% chance of success. Captain Rice made her decision. Deploy countermeasures, defensive pattern Omega. Minimal energy signatures, chaff and electronic jammers only. Let's try not to add fuel to the fire. Across the Zexarian fleet, targeting systems suddenly went haywire as the space around the Thunderchild erupted with thousands of small metallic objects dispersing in precise geometric patterns, while electromagnetic pulses scrambled sensor readings. In Zexarian Central Command, pandemonium broke out as the tactical display transformed from a clear battle plan to chaotic confusion. The human vessel, it's multiplying, shouted the sensor coordination officer, his voice breaking with panic. The main display showed what appeared to be dozens of identical ships, where only one had been moments before, each emitting energy signatures that confuse Zexarian targeting systems. Impossible, breathed Admiral Craft 4. Their technology can't. Admiral, interrupted his communications officer, Commander Zextroll of the Righteous Fang, reports his vessel has achieved a solid targeting solution and is moving to engage the human ship directly. Before Craft 4 could countermand the order, the display showed the Righteous Fang breaking formation, accelerating toward one of the phantom images. A young officer at an auxiliary monitoring station, Junior Tactical Analyst Trilzex, watched with growing curiosity rather than fear. Unlike her superiors, she had been studying human communication intercepts from a cultural rather than military perspective. Something about this situation didn't align with her emerging understanding of these aliens. Why, she murmured quietly, would a superior force choose such non-lethal tactics? Her question went unnoticed in the chaos as the Righteous Fang disappeared in a brilliant flash of light, its primary power core destabilized by a precise hit from the Thunderchild's point defense system that disabled the vessel without causing a single casualty. Admiral Wei Chen slammed his fist on the polished obsidian surface of the United Earth Government Emergency Council table, causing several holographic projections to flicker momentarily. One ship, 157 souls, surrounded by an alien armada, and you're debating protocols. His voice carried both military authority and barely controlled frustration. Every minute we waste in discussion is another minute the Thunderchild stands alone. Vice Chancellor Rodriguez adjusted her formal collar uncomfortably. Admiral, we appreciate your concern for your personnel, but first contact scenarios require careful consideration. If we send a military response, we could escalate an already volatile situation. With respect, Madam Vice Chancellor, Chen replied, his tone making it clear how little respect he actually felt at that moment. The situation escalated the moment these aliens fired upon our vessel. Captain Rice followed first contact protocols to the letter, and they responded with violence. The fragmented distress signal from the Thunderchild played again in the center of the table, Captain Rice's voice breaking through static. Under attack by unknown forces. Attempted peaceful communication. Request immediate. Damaged communications. Surrounded. Admiral Chen pointed to the signal projection. The Thunderchild is a scientific vessel with defensive capabilities, not a warship. Every second we delay reduces their chances of survival. Defense Minister Okonkwo, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. Admiral Chen's assessment is correct. The diplomatic response team can follow the rapid reaction force. I'm authorizing deployment of the UES Handshake with full diplomatic complement, escorted by 3 vessels from the 7th Fleet. The Vice Chancellor looked as though she might object, but the Defense Minister continued. This decision is within my authority under Emergency Protocol 7 Alpha. The motion is not up for debate. Admiral Chen nodded gratefully to Okonkwo. Thank you, Minister. I'll personally lead the diplomatic team aboard the Handshake. We'll depart within the hour. As the meeting adjourned, Admiral Chen's aide approached with a data tablet. Sir, we've assembled the specialists you requested. They're waiting in conference room 3. Chen nodded. Tell them I'll be there immediately. And make sure Dr. Caftry is among them. If anyone can understand alien technology on the fly, it's him. Aboard the Thunderchild, the crew fought exhaustion as they entered their 3rd day of constant alert. The mess hall had been converted into an emergency planning center, with tables pushed together and covered with holographic projections and physical diagrams. Lieutenant Sofia Rodriguez, Assistant Communications Officer, hunched over her portable workstation, her eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep. For the past 18 hours, she had been analyzing the intercepted Zexarian transmissions, looking for patterns that might help establish communication. I think I've got something, she announced, drawing the attention of the small group gathered around the tables. Their communication uses a 7-tone harmonic language base. Each communication contains multiple layers of information transmitted simultaneously. Captain Reyes moved closer. Can you translate it? Rodriguez shook her head. Not yet, but I've identified repeating patterns that likely refer to us. to the Thunderchild. The same harmonic clusters appear in nearly all transmissions, followed by what appear to be emotional markers. Dr. Marcus Wong, the ship's chief science officer, frowned thoughtfully. Emotional markers? You mean they encode emotional context directly into their communications? Exactly, Rodriguez confirmed. And based on comparative analysis with other sections we've intercepted, these particular markers indicate fear, extreme fear. At a nearby table, Security Chief Valentina Orlova had been conferring with Dr. Mbiki about potential visual communication options. Their discussion had grown increasingly heated. If we guess wrong, we could start an interstellar war, Orlova warned, her Russian accent becoming more pronounced with her frustration. Dr. Wong joined their conversation. If we do nothing, we're already in one. Captain Rice, overhearing, made her decision. Prepare the external light arrays, Dr. Wong. We're going to talk to them in colors. Colors, Captain? Orlova questioned. Most species with visual perception develop color recognition before complex language, Rice explained. Dr. Mbiki's preliminary analysis suggests these aliens have compound eyes similar to Earth insects, which typically have excellent color differentiation. We'll use simple color patterns in standard first contact sequences. Rice turned to address her exhausted crew. I know we're all running on fumes and stims at this point, but help is coming. Earth will have received our distress signal by now. Until then, we need to stay alive and find a way to communicate with these aliens before trigger fingers get too itchy out there. As if to emphasize her point, the ship shuddered slightly as another probing shot struck their shields. Get those light arrays programmed, Dr. Wong, she ordered. Lieutenant Rodriguez, continue your analysis. If we can establish even basic communication, we might be able to de-escalate this situation before the shooting really starts. In her small monitoring station aboard the Zexarian vessel Voidseeker, junior tactical analyst Shrilzex reviewed the footage of the Thunderchild's encounter with the Righteous Fang for the 12th time. Something about the encounter troubled her deeply. The human vessel had disabled the Righteous Fang with surgical precision, targeting only its propulsion and weapons systems while deliberately avoiding life support and crew quarters. Such restraint was inconsistent with the narrative of humans as merciless warriors bent on conquest. If their technology was as superior as everyone claimed, why hadn't they simply destroyed their attackers? Why the careful, non-lethal response? As she pondered these questions, her monitoring equipment detected an unusual pattern of light emissions from the human vessel. Regular pulses of color in sequences of prime numbers. Blue, green, yellow, repeated in mathematical patterns. Instead of reporting this immediately as a potential attack, Trilzex found herself recording the patterns, her forefingers tapping in rhythm with the pulses. They're trying to talk to us, she whispered to herself. Not fight us. The cavernous chamber housing the stellar compressor hummed with ominous energy. Project Director Sil Vex moved methodically among the massive power conduits, her specialized appendages making minute adjustments to the containment field parameters. For 40 cycles, she had dedicated her existence to this project, refining theories once thought impossible into the physical monstrosity that now occupied the heart of the secret facility orbiting Zexar VI. Final diagnostic sequence complete, Director, announced her assistant. All systems report optimal function. Silvex's respiratory sacs expanded slowly as she contemplated what was about to happen. Begin primary power accumulation sequence, she instructed, her voice lacking the satisfaction one might expect at such a moment of culmination. Throughout the chamber, energy conduits began to glow with steadily increasing intensity. What had once been theoretical equations scrawled on her workstation now manifested as the most destructive weapon ever conceived by the Zexarian Confederacy, a device capable of creating a localized space-time anomaly that would consume anything within its deployment radius. The communication array chimed, indicating a priority transmission from Central Command. Silvex activated the receiver, and the projected image of Admiral Kraft 4 appeared before her. Project Director, deployment authorization has been granted by unanimous consent of the High Command, the Admiral stated, his voice carrying the harmonics of grave responsibility. You are instructed to proceed with immediate deployment of the stellar compressor against the human vessel. Sylvex's inner eyelids flickered rapidly, a gesture of extreme distress rarely seen in her species. Admiral, I must voice my final objection. This weapon violates everything our civilization stands for. The ethical directives established after the Morning of Worlds explicitly forbid. Your objection is noted, Director, Kraft 4 interrupted, but the decision is final. The human vessel represents an unprecedented threat to our entire civilization. Conventional methods have proven ineffective. We have no choice. As the transmission ended, Sylvex turned to her assembled team, scientists and engineers who had worked alongside her for decades. Prepare the deployment sequence, she ordered, her voice hollow. Target coordinates to follow from Central Command. As her team rushed to comply, Sylvex allowed herself a moment of reflection. Had it come to this, using a weapon of mass destruction against a single vessel that had yet to fire upon any Zexarian ship with lethal intent, the ethical implications weighed heavily upon her consciousness. On the bridge of the Thunderchild, Science Officer Dr. Marcus Wong's console suddenly erupted with urgent alerts. Captain, I'm detecting a massive energy buildup from one of the ships at the edge of the alien formation, he reported, his fingers flying over the controls as he attempted to analyze the readings. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. Some form of contained gravitational distortion. On screen, Captain Reyes ordered. The main display shifted to show a Zexarian vessel unlike the others, larger with an unusual configuration focused around what appeared to be a massive emitter array. Dr. Wong's expression grew increasingly alarmed as he processed the incoming data. Captain, based on these readings, they're creating a controlled singularity, essentially a black hole weapon. The theoretical principles are similar to abandoned research from the Hawking Institute decades ago. Earth abandoned such research as too dangerous and ethically problematic. Potential effects. Rise asked, her voice steady despite the implications. Total annihilation of anything within its deployment radius. No known shielding would be effective. Lieutenant Chen spoke up from Tactical. Captain, I'm tracking their targeting solutions. They're aiming for our position, but the weapon's predicted effect radius would encompass. He paused, double-checking his calculations. The inhabited moon of that gas giant, at coordinates 227 Mark 43. A civilian population. Rise asked sharply. Based on the communication traffic we've intercepted, yes, confirmed Lieutenant Rodriguez. Preliminary analysis suggests a population of several million. Captain Reyes stood, her decision already made. Helm, set course directly between that weapon platform and the inhabited moon. Position us to shield as much of the moon as possible with our hull. The bridge fell silent as the implications of her order registered. Captain, Chen said quietly, if that weapon is what Dr. Wong believes it is, our shields won't protect us. I'm aware, Lieutenant, Rise replied. But they might think twice about firing if it means destroying their own people along with us. And if they don't, she paused, meeting the eyes of each bridge officer in turn. Then we die doing what's right. As the Thunderchild moved into position, placing itself directly between the stellar compressor and the inhabited moon of Zexar-II, a wave of confused communications swept through the Zexarian fleet. Battlemaster Thrix observed this maneuver from his command vessel with growing confusion. The tactical display clearly showed the human ship deliberately placing itself in a defensive posture relative to Zexar-II's populated moon. What warrior race sacrifices itself for its enemy? He wondered aloud, his exoskeleton flushing with conflicting emotional hues. The communications officer turned from his station. Battlemaster, Central Command confirms deployment authorization for the stellar compressor. They're instructing all vessels to maintain position and prepare for possible spatial distortion effects following deployment. Thrix stared at the display, watching as the human vessel maintained its protective position. Something fundamental in his understanding of these aliens had been wrong from the beginning. No species intent on conquest would risk its own destruction to protect an enemy's civilian population. "Open a channel to all vessels under my direct command," Fricks ordered suddenly. "Channel open, Battlemaster." "This is Battlemaster Thrix. I am countermanding the deployment authorization for the stellar compressor. All vessels in Battle Group 7 are instructed to increase distance from the weapon platform and stand down from combat posture." His second-in-command approached cautiously. "Battlemaster, you do not have authority to countermand High Command." "I have authority over my own conscience," Fricks replied. "And I will not be party to an atrocity against a species we have fundamentally misunderstood." Throughout the fleet, Thrix's order created immediate division. Half the vessels under his command began pulling away from their positions, while others maintained station, creating the first civil conflict in 300 cycles of Zexarian history. Lieutenant Sofia Rodriguez hadn't slept in nearly 36 hours. Her eyes burned from staring at scrolling data patterns, and her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the parameters of her translation algorithm for the 19th time. Around her, the makeshift communications lab hummed with the sounds of desperate innovation as the Thunderchild's crew fought to establish meaningful contact with the aliens surrounding them. "There," she muttered, isolating a particular harmonic cluster from an intercepted transmission. "Computer, apply extraction pattern Delta 7 to this frequency range." The computer processed her request, transforming the alien sounds into a visual waveform pattern. Rodriguez studied it intently, comparing it to her growing database of identified Zexarian communication elements. "That's it," she exclaimed, startling an ensign dozing at a nearby console. "The Zexarians communicate simultaneously on multiple frequency layers. They're saying different things at the same time." Captain Reyes, who had just entered the lab, moved quickly to Rodriguez's station. "Explain." Rodriguez gestured excitedly at her display. "Each transmission contains at least 3 distinct information layers: factual content, emotional context, and what appears to be social hierarchy markers. It's not just what they're saying, but how they feel about it and who they're saying it to, all encoded simultaneously." "Can you use this to communicate with them?" Rise asked, hope creeping into her voice for the first time in days. "I think so," Rodriguez replied, already adjusting her equipment. "We need to craft a message that includes emotional harmonics. Their language seems physically impossible for human vocal cords, but we can synthesize it." For the next hour, Rodriguez worked feverishly, coding a message that incorporated the emotional frequency patterns she had identified. The result was a hauntingly beautiful sequence of overlapping tones carrying a simple message: "We are lost travelers. We seek understanding, not conquest. Please speak with us." Captain Reyes reviewed the translation. "How confident are you in this, Lieutenant?" "About 70% on the content, 90% on the emotional harmonics," Rodriguez answered honestly. "The emotional component seems more standardized across their communications." "Good enough," Reyes decided. "Broadcast on all frequencies they've been using." Aboard the Zexarian vessel Twilight Observer, Junior Communications Specialist Trill Zex monitored her station with growing unease. The fleet remained in disarray following Battlemaster Thrix's unexpected order, with vessels divided between those maintaining aggressive posture and those withdrawing from combat formation. Her monitoring equipment suddenly registered an incoming transmission on multiple Zexarian frequencies. Unlike previous human attempts at communication, this one contained something astonishing: emotional resonance patterns previously thought impossible for non-Zexarians to produce. Trilzex adjusted her receiver, isolating the message and analyzing its structure. The content was simple enough, a plea for communication, but the emotional harmonics expressed concepts of peaceful intent, confusion, and a desire for mutual understanding that transcended the mere words. Her superior officer was currently engaged in emergency communications with Central Command regarding the fleet's fragmented status. Protocol demanded that she immediately report this development, but something in the human message resonated with doubts that had been growing in her mind since she first observed the Thunderchild's non-lethal defense tactics. Against direct orders prohibiting unauthorized communication with the human vessel, Trilzex composed a simplified response. She stripped away the complex social hierarchical markers that typically cluttered Zexarian communication, focusing instead on clarity and basic emotional resonance patterns indicating cautious openness. "This one receives your message," she transmitted. "Why does your vessel shield our moon?" On the Thunderchild, Rodriguez nearly fell from her chair when the alien response came through her headset. "Captain," she called out, "we've got a response." Reyes rushed to her station. "What are they saying?" Rodriguez quickly ran the message through her translation matrix. "It's a simple question. They're asking why we positioned ourselves to shield their moon from their weapon. They can't understand self-sacrifice," Dr. Mbiki suggested from nearby. "Their entire understanding of us is based on the assumption that we're aggressive predators." Reyes nodded thoughtfully. "Tell them the truth, Lieutenant. Explain that we wouldn't allow civilian casualties, even among those who are currently treating us as enemies." As Rodriguez crafted the response, she added, "Should I include information about our crew complement, Captain? It might help establish trust if they understand we're not the massive invasion force they seem to think we are." "Good idea," Reyes agreed. "Include basic ship specifications and crew numbers. Keep it simple and direct." Rodriguez sent the message, including information that the Thunderchild carried a crew of only 157 people. When she played the Zexarian's response through the translation system a few minutes later, the emotional harmonics registered something akin to shock. "Captain," Rodriguez reported, surprise evident in her voice, "I think we just blew their minds. They're asking for confirmation that our entire crew consists of only 157 individuals. Their translator, I think it's just one person we're communicating with, seems to believe our ship would require thousands of crew members." Reyes couldn't help but laugh, the first genuine expression of humor anyone on the bridge had heard in days. "Confirm it, and see if they'll tell us how many crew their comparable vessels carry." The response came quickly. The smallest Zexarian military vessel carried no fewer than 600 crew members, with their larger battlecruisers hosting up to 3,000. Trilzex stared at her console in disbelief. Only 157 humans operated the vessel that had thrown the entire Zexarian Confederacy into panic. It seemed impossible. The efficiency and adaptability required to operate such a complex vessel with so few personnel defied Zexarian understanding of technological operation. More importantly, why would this human vessel, with its apparently superior technology and tactical capabilities, position itself to protect Zexarian civilians? The action contradicted everything she had been told about these dangerous aliens. With growing certainty, Trilzex realized that the entire conflict had been based on misunderstanding and fear. She needed to share this insight, but doing so would reveal her unauthorized communication with the enemy. After a moment's hesitation, she copied the entire exchange to the public information network, bypassing military encryption. Within minutes, the conversation between the human vessel and a single Zexarian communication specialist spread across civilian and military networks alike, creating a groundswell of confusion, hope, and outrage at the near-catastrophic misunderstanding. The diplomatic vessel UES Handshake dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Zexarian system, flanked by 3 escorts from Earth's 7th Fleet. Admiral Wei Chen stood on the bridge, studying the tactical display with intense focus. The scene before him defied expectations. The Thunderchild remained intact, surrounded by a disorganized formation of alien vessels that appeared to be in some state of confusion rather than attack posture. "Status report," he demanded. "Sensors show the Thunderchild with minimal hull damage, Admiral," reported the tactical officer. "Power signatures stable. The alien fleet appears to be in disarray. Approximately half have withdrawn to a defensive perimeter, while others maintain attack positions. There's significant communication traffic between vessels. Admiral Chen frowned. He had expected to find the Thunderchild in dire circumstances, possibly even destroyed. This uncertain standoff was promising, but puzzling. "Open a channel to Captain Reyes," he ordered. Moments later, Reyes's tired but smiling face appeared on the main view screen. "Admiral Chen, your timing is impeccable, as always." "Captain," Chen acknowledged with a nod. "You appear to be in one piece. Last we heard, you were surrounded by hostile forces." "We still are, sir," Reyes replied. "But the situation has evolved. We've established communication with at least one Zexarian. That's what they call themselves. And there seems to be growing dissent within their fleet regarding how to handle us. I'd recommend a cautious approach, sir. We're at a delicate juncture." "Understood, Captain. We'll hold position and proceed with standard diplomatic protocols." Chen turned to his communications officer. "Transmit our first contact package on all frequencies, emphasizing peaceful intent." On Zexar Prime, the Confederacy's capital world, the Grand Chamber of the High Command had devolved into near chaos. The leaked conversation between the human vessel and Specialist Trilzex had spread throughout the Confederacy, undermining the official narrative of humans as ruthless conquerors. "This breach of security is unprecedented," thundered Defense Coordinator Vrex Moore. "The specialist responsible should face immediate termination of service." "That is hardly our most pressing concern," countered Science Director Nilvax. "If these translations are accurate, we have nearly committed a civilizational atrocity based on misinterpretation and fear." A junior aide rushed into the chamber, approaching the head chancellor with obvious urgency. After a brief whispered exchange, the chancellor raised his primary appendages for silence. "A new human vessel has entered our space," he announced. "Smaller than the first, with minimal weapons signatures. It is broadcasting what appears to be formal greeting protocols." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans had sent a diplomatic vessel, despite the Zexarian attack on their first ship. "Perhaps," suggested the chancellor carefully, "we should respond to their communication attempts before assumptions lead us further astray." The first official meeting took place aboard a neutral Zexarian station. Admiral Chen led a diverse team of 32 humans of various ages, genders, and specializations, a concept foreign to the rigidly hierarchical Zexarian society. The Zexarians had expected a massive military delegation and were visibly confused by the small, varied group that emerged from a handshake. As the formal introductions proceeded, Dr. Liam Katri, the xenotechnologist, requested permission to demonstrate the Thunderchild's fearsome adaptive hull technology that had caused such alarm. With Zexarian approval, he placed a sample under a microscope visible to both delegations. "This is standard carbon fiber weave with programmable nanoscale texture," he explained. "The surface can be adjusted to absorb or reflect various wavelengths, primarily designed to protect against solar radiation and provide thermal regulation in diverse environments." The Zexarian scientists leaned forward, their compound eyes fixed on the display. "But this is remarkably simple," stated the lead Zexarian scientist. "Our own researchers explored similar technology centuries ago, but abandoned it as impractical compared to our crystalline lattice approach." Dr. Katri nodded understandingly. "Sometimes the path not taken leads to innovations others cannot imagine. Our technological development followed different priorities than yours." As the meeting progressed, more misunderstandings were clarified. The humans' precise maneuvering that had seemed so impossible was explained as adaptations of mining techniques used in asteroid fields. The self-repair capabilities were revealed to be simple maintenance drones. The weapon capabilities that had seemed so devastating were shown to be primarily defensive in nature. "It seems," Admiral Chen stated carefully, "that our greatest difference is not technology, but approach. Humans tend to maximize efficiency and adaptability with minimal resources, necessity born from our earlier resource limitations on Earth. First Chancellor Zex Moro, who had joined the delegation after initial reports proved promising, responded with growing understanding, while we Zexarians developed specialized solutions requiring significant resources and personnel, an approach born from our abundance. 3 days later, Captain Rice stood on the bridge of the Thunderchild as Admiral Chen finalized the Thunder Accords, a preliminary agreement establishing peaceful relations between humanity and the Zexarian Confederacy. You realize, Chen told her privately after the signing, that rumors about the Thunderchild have already reached at least a dozen other civilizations. Our intelligence suggests several have begun military buildups in response. Rice nodded, watching as 5 Zexarian vessels moved into escort formation alongside the Thunderchild. Admiral Kraftfor had insisted on providing an honor guard for their departure, though Rice suspected it was as much for their protection as for ceremony. Set course for home, she ordered her helmsman, her gaze fixed on the stars. And let's hope our next first contact starts with a handshake instead of a panic. As the Thunderchild prepared to depart, Rice couldn't help but reflect on the irony of their situation. A simple exploration vessel with basic defensive capabilities had managed to terrify an entire civilization, not through superior strength, but through misunderstood intentions and different technological approaches. Perhaps humanity's greatest strength and greatest danger wasn't their technology at all, but the legends born from misunderstanding. In a galaxy of diverse civilizations, perception could be more powerful than reality. The Thunderchild's engines hummed to life, and with its Zexarian escort, the vessel that had nearly started an interstellar war departed peacefully for Earth, leaving behind a transformed Zexarian society and a reputation that would echo across the stars long before humans themselves could follow.